Should you have any pity for anyone on Wall Street? Well, you should read an interesting article that came out earlier today in Bloomberg about various Wall Streeters who are having trouble getting by on, well, $350,000 a year in the case of Andrew Schiff of Euro Pacific Capital. Robert Frank has done some follow-up and spoken to Mr. Schiff about whether you can indeed get by on $350,000 a year in New York City. Now,
it's tough out there for bankers.
Listen,
they're having a really hard time.
First of all, I read the piece, and I may express, I don't know, sympathy is the right word, but I can kind of understand where Mr. Schiff is coming from. But I have to question his judgment in being so public in discussing it. What do you think? What is going on here? And you called him the new poster child for class warfare. Do you think this thing's going to run and run?
Yeah, so let's go back a bit to a professor in Chicago named Todd Henderson. Todd Henderson and his wife made more than $250,000 a year. And he pointed out in a blog post that it was not making him rich. He wasn't living like a rich guy on $250,000 by the time you include private schools, medical bills, housing costs, et cetera, et cetera. Living in a large city on $250,000 or maybe $300,000 doesn't make you rich. And he got excoriated in the blogosphere, and he eventually took down the post, went into hiding, and it became a nightmare for him. Now, what he was saying was totally factual. What Andrew Schiff is saying in this Bloomberg article is 100% factual, that if you're making $350,000 a year, you cannot send both your kids to private school and have a summer rental and own a brownstone in Brooklyn because you can't afford those things. Now, for him, he feels like somehow the dream of New York has been stolen from him, because when he was growing up, you could have these things even if you weren't super rich. So for him and his social circles and friends, this was not a surprising thing to say. What I think was a little off-key or tone-deaf on his part was to say this at a time when a lot of Americans are still losing their homes, losing their jobs, and not realizing that not many people outside of New York have sympathy for someone who's complaining on $350,000 a year.
Also, in fairness to Mr. Schiff, it was placed in the context of Wall Street Bonuses story that had a headline, "Bonus drop means trading Aspen for discount cereal." There was no mention of either Aspen or discount cereal.
But it was a great headline. It was a great headline.
And the thing about Mr. Schiff is that he's not being paid by a large Wall Street bank. Frankly, he's not a banker or a trader. He's like a marketing guy for his brother's firm.
That's right.
So he's not even like a traditional Wall Street guy, but basically he's being set up as a poster child for class warfare, isn't he?
Well, he absolutely is. And you know, you could argue that the story is misleading. He said he didn't feel misled by the article. He said the point he wanted to make was that New York has gotten incredibly expensive, even for the affluent, but it was rolled into this larger story. We see headlines today, banker bonuses are down 14%. But look, for most Americans, $350,000 a year is wealthy. And if you work for a brokerage firm, many Americans would say it's fair to call you a Wall Streeter if you work for a brokerage firm.
Right. You know, it reminds me, it's very interesting how these things play into kind of, I don't know, the media, and people like take these examples and they feel the need. I was reading some of the comments. People feel the need to express their own outrage or their own view through other people.
It makes them feel better.
Why is it that money grates on people? Because most people, when they think of wealth, they think of it in relative terms. They don't think of it in terms of their own life. It's always me versus some other guy.
Well, here's the thing about this. Americans are, I think, generally still fine with people getting wealthy, even in finance, if they made it honestly. What they don't tolerate is somebody making a salary that puts them near the top 1% and complaining that it's not enough. Look, you don't have a constitutional right to put your kids in private school. You don't have a constitutional right to have a summer rental in Connecticut. So what Americans, I guess, resent is not the wealth, because they all feel, look, this is a great country for creating wealth. That's why we all love it. But it's having a level of wealth and then complaining that it's not enough, especially in these tough times.
Check out Robert Frank's piece. It's on your website.
It's on the Wealth Report blog
at WSJ.com.